Hi everybody, Dacob here. Welcome back to the Fragrant Bunker. Today we're going to touch base on something super elegant and sophisticated. You know, my favorite brand when it comes to perfumes is Chanel, and we're going to touch base on the top 5 Les Exclusifs fragrances. I mean, it's such a beautiful topic, and I live. So subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. You can join me on Patreon for extra perks. Superdacob all spelled together there. And this video is being filmed live in front of my patrons, and they get access first before anybody else to this content. So mysteries shall be revealed. Thank you to all my patrons in the live chats. Hi guys. Listen, let's begin chronologically, shall we? And this can mean only one thing. And this can only mean number 22. What can I tell ya? Oh, I love the sky in the background with the 22. Because you know why? This is an aldehyde miracle. I say this is the most giving of all Chanel perfumes. Oh my God, it's such a gift to humanity, seriously. Now, I have this perfume in all its concentrations. You know, I have the discontinued eau de toilette, which actually I can show you. I have it here. It's changed, honey. Look at how dark it got. It's the vanilla that darkens with time. The smell is really gorgeous. And then I have a relatively current 6301 batch of eau de parfum. Gorgeously fresh. The way that they've reformulated the eau de parfum in the past few years is really beautiful. You know, number 22, right around 2016, was as it was just reformulated into eau de parfum. It was a little bit screechy, but I have the feeling that Olivier has fine-tuned it and tweaked it. It's a little bit more mellow. But that doesn't matter. It's, you know what? I can't resist. It is, you know, as much as reformulations do perfumes very little justice, Chanel manages to really maintain a level of quality there that it works for me. The current version of number 22 eau de parfum, as well as the current version of the extrait, to die for. So this, I mean, plus it's an Ernest Beau, originally Ernest Beau creation that Olivier Polge is now reformulating, and that Jacques Polge reformulated before him. Divine. I mean, if you can get your hands on this, it's a masterpiece. And of course, it had to be in the top 5 Les Exclusifs fragrances because this is the OG. This is one of the perfumes that was created during Coco's life. Bear that in mind. We should never forget. Even though she was not a perfumer herself, she still chose which perfumes are going to represent her. So this is one of those rare instances, one of those rare connections that we have directly to Coco to kind of understand her better, to understand her style better, to understand her joie de vivre better, her allure better by smelling perfumes that she approved of, even though they're reformulated. Trust you me, this thing, even in today's formulation, is so beautiful. And the quality is amazing. The dry down of this thing, the tuberose, the aldehydes, the ylang-ylang, the buttery ylang-ylang, the hint of incense, which they took out, but I have the feeling it's kind of back again. And the vanilla dry down and the woodsy accord, it's just mesmerizing. Almost like an ambery honeysuckle tuberose. It's just 22 is a miracle, really. I often say to myself, I'm so lucky to be alive in a time where something like this exists. I kid you not, it makes me that happy. It gives me so much joy that I really sometimes do think about this. And I think to myself, gosh, if I were born in another time before this existed, or in a parallel universe where this never existed, to not even know of this. If you don't know that it exists, you can't be sad. But now knowing that it exists, it kind of makes me sad to think that I could have been born in a time when it doesn't. This is insane. I'm crazy. Anyway, Oh, amazing. So that was number one. Number two. And listen, and I'm going to show you the top five that literally, if you could only have five, you just need these five. Honestly, you just need these five. Number two. Oh, honey, this is another miracle. Seriously. And I mean, a little bit of a cliche probably, but Cuir de Russie. I do have in my hand here the eau de toilette, but I do have several bottles of the eau de parfum. I actually also have several bottles of the eau de toilette. I've stocked up on this one like crazy. Okay. So when I heard that they were discontinuing the eau de toilette, I purchased several bottles. Then as the eau de parfum came out, I have several batches just following the reformulations bit by bit. The batch codes, the variety of raw materials, how they've put them together. There's always slight differences from batch to batch. It's so fascinating. If I could afford it, to be perfectly honest with you, I would buy one bottle of every new batch code that comes out just to kind of smell the evolution of the fragrance. I mean, it's just really divine. Of course, I have the parfum, the eau de parfum, and the eau de toilette of Cuir de Russie. And this is a 20s Ernest Beau creation. Also part of the suffragette movement. Yeah. Cuir de Russie is usually a name attributed to male fragrances, especially in the 20s, but not with Coco. Coco created listen, we know that perfume knows no gender. It's a unisex, male, female, whatever. But back in the day, it was marketed very clearly to women. But it was one of the first, if not the first fragrance that used this classic masculine connotation in the title, Russian leather, but for women. There's several articles you can find online about the suffragette movement and how they actually wore fragrances as well. One of them being a signature of the movement, which is Cuir de Russie. Allegedly, of course, because, hey, we were born a little bit after that time. Or were we? So, obviously, you're going to also hear reports about how Cuir de Russie has been reformulated, toned down, watered down. It's just a mere shadow of itself. It doesn't reflect the strength of the suffragette movement back in the day. I beg to differ. Because, quite frankly, I feel like the suffragette movement still needs to exist. Updated for modern times. Women are still struggling to have equal respect in society, whether it be economically, psychologically, physically. The battles have adapted in first world countries, okay? I mean, this is a perfume from France. So obviously we're talking about the Western world. Still in the Western world, there are struggles. And the ladies out there know it. I just support you. I'm just there to say I love you. I respect you with all my heart, but you know better than anybody else how much it is still a struggle. It's a modern struggle. It has evolved. So has the perfume, but it's still there for you. It's still there for you for your modern day battle for your rights. It's a beauty. It's that subtle hay accord and the rose hiding in the background. I have an older batch of the toilette. It also turns very dark, very similar to how dark this one turns. So it has that kind of hint of vanilla in there as well. A tobacco-y, irisy, smoky leather accord. But this leather, it's the softest suede. This is that suede that we find in 31 Rue Cambon on Coco Chanel's couch in her apartment. That famous, infamous couch on which she laid on and smoked on for many, many years. That couch that smells of suede leather, but also of Coco's tobacco. That smoky tobacco note and mixed with the leather accord and then the roses. If you want a slightly more intense version of this, plus more hay, like an added hay accord, like a deeper, slightly skankier version, go for the Extrait Majestic. Majestic. I love the parfum as well. Hands down, in the top 5 Les Exclusifs. The next one is kind of the opposite of Cuir de Russie, and that's why it's also in this list. But not just because of that, but because it's a beautiful pendant. It contrasts it and balances it out so beautifully. So on one end you have Cuir de Russie with its mysterious suede-y, velvety suede accord, and then over here you have the opposite of that earthiness. You have floral accord. You have most beautiful sunshine, summery Gardenia, another Ernest Beau masterpiece. Now, I'm particularly fond of the eau de parfum. I prefer it to the eau de toilette, which is very rare. Usually I prefer the eau de toilette of the Les Exclusifs, and I do love the parfum. Oh, but the eau de toilette, oh my gosh, okay. First of all, you know, we've been told many times that the molecule of the Gardenia has not been yet, well, maybe by the time we make this video, maybe some scientists out there managed to extrapolate it and turn it into fragrant form, but usually they tell you, you can't. As fragrant as a Gardenia is, you can't turn it into perfume. The molecule has not been isolated yet properly. Something doesn't work with it in perfume form. So everybody who does a Gardenia accord has to kind of combine different structural chemical patterns to mimic a Gardenia. Now, for those of you who have had Gardenias growing in their house or in their gardens, they're quite delicate flowers. They do not like gushes of wind. They like stability. So it's kind of difficult, you know, if you're growing it in the house, when it blooms, it's going to suffocate you. It's that intense. You got to really love it to have it in your house. But if you have it next to the window, because you think, let me open the window so that kind of the smell of the Gardenia gets out of the house a little bit. Well, if it gets a gush of wind, it's going to get sick. So it's a very delicate flower, but also poisonously intense in its smell. There's a green poisonous accord in the natural Gardenia that I have found can be unlocked within the eau de parfum of Gardenia if and when you overspray it. And I mean overspray it, honey. I went through bottles and bottles of this. I kid you not, especially in summer, it's insane. But sometimes I over 30 sprays. And you know what? I'm not ashamed to say it. But when I get to that 30th spray and it becomes intoxicating, that's when I reach that green poisonous accord for me. And when I go there, mind-blowing, wasteful, but it's a treat, honey. It's a treat. It's a treat like no other. So majestic. I highly recommend Gardenia. Again, it's a 20s creation that has been reformulated throughout the years, of course, but a lot of people like to wear this for their weddings. It has been marketed often as a wedding fragrance together with number 22. Number 22 was also marketed as a wedding fragrance for a certain period of time in history. But for modern day times, if you go to Chanel and you ask for, you know, something for a wedding, they're going to recommend their platinum ring. They only have 2. Platinum is amazing. It also connects us to Coco's 1932 Platinum collection. That's why I got it. Memory of Coco. But they would also suggest to you Gardenia, especially the parfum, you know, like a special thing for weddings. And sure, but I would not just wear this for the wedding. I would wear Gardenia for every occasion. It's gorgeous. I love to wear it at home a lot. In the evening time to calm down, chill and relax a little bit. But Also early in the morning, right after breakfast, when I go out and I want to conquer the world, especially in springtime when the chlorophyll is at its maximum green, and then you wear this, it's just magical. And it's a little bit kind of the opposite of Cuir de Russie in terms of smell, so they kind of combine each other very well. You can flip from one to the other and have like such a wonderful olfactive surprise because they're so different from each other. Number 4, we're going far away. We're traveling towards mystical, secret islands. You guessed it. You guessed it. Bois des Iles. The forests of the islands, or the woods of the islands. Bois des Iles. The wood of the islands, or the woods of the islands, in French. This is a gorgeous sandalwood. And I know some people say, oh, it's a gorgeous sandalwood that doesn't even have sandalwood in it. Well, Chanel's website, as of today, states very clearly that there is sandalwood in here. Whether it is a substitute for sandalwood, a chemical compound, because we know harvesting sandalwood is very tricky, iffy. The original sandalwood wood is all the trees have almost been depleted, so it has been said that they're going to need 20 to 25 years to replenish themselves before they can be harvested again. So whatever is in here, there's also a gorgeous, all Chanel perfumes have aldehydes. So it goes without saying. Number 22, aldehydic bomb, the most aldehydic of Chanel perfumes. Cuir de Russie, aldehydes. Gardenia has aldehydes, and of course Bois des Iles has aldehydes. But it also has a citrusy blast in the opening note, especially when the batch is very fresh. This is an eau de parfum, but again, I recommend also eau de toilette and extrait, and I have all 3. Batch code 7401, purchased end of 2022. You can see how much I already used it up in just 3 months, 4 months, 3.5 months. Divine. So we have the aldehydes, the citrusy notes in the opening, fruity citrusy notes, and then we go into the buttery, the most buttery ylang ylang ever. And if you know how to combine ylang ylang with sandalwood accord, you get this delicious, creamy depth. And then we go into the woods, deep into the woods. But these woods are, again, this is a 20s Ernest Beau creation. Late 20s, so you have to envision mid 20s, late 20s. You have to envision the entire Parisian movement. Nowadays, whatever you say, you would be cancelled because obviously, let's just say Josephine Baker was very popular at the time. You all know all the names used, which were not slur words back then, but to denote a certain as they said back in the day, exotic flair, which was an accepted terminology back then. Today, obviously, it is not. But so the perfume world and also Coco followed that tendency of this desire to travel to faraway lands. And many perfumes were created as like fairy tale moments. Perfumes were poems of Europeans, how they envisioned faraway lands and exotic lands to smell like. Mind you, Coco never traveled anywhere real. I mean, she went to America. She stayed in Europe. When she was asked, Coco, are you in interviews, are you ever going to go to Asia? Are you going to go to the Middle East? Are you going to go to Australia? She always said, no, I don't have the time. I haven't seen all the stuff at home yet. I have so much to see here still, and I'm late to all of that. When will I find the time? But the vision, the fashion of the time was very much projected towards that vision of exotique. And Bois des Iles fits into that particular moment in time. And Ernest Beau with Coco Chanel created the Chanel-esque vision of escapism, of just letting go of all your sorrows and worries and flying off to the woods of the islands, far away, distant islands. And it is kind of like a potpourri, an imaginary journey to a faraway land. And it is beyond poetic and beautiful. And it is such a gender bender. And by gender, I don't mean male, female. I mean genders in poetry, like, you know, the genre, the genre of topics. You know, it's happy, but it's also dramatic. It can be a horror movie. It can be a thriller. It can be a comedy. But it's distant. It's so, so, so beautiful. And when it was first released, it was released in a wooden container, gorgeous wooden box that you would lift the lid and the little glass bottle would be inside. And it was kind of an exotic wood, a dark wood. It was just, I mean, those were the days. The attention to detail was incredible, you know. So Bois des Iles is number 4. And of course, these are the 4 from the 20s. I mean, these are the OGs, you guys. These are the 4 that Coco Chanel smelled herself. But now, of course, the difficult part is to find the number 5. We can't choose Chanel number 5 because Chanel number 5 is not part of the Les Exclusifs range. So which one is it gonna be? One doth wonder. It wasn't that easy to pick, but then again, actually it was. Strangely enough, number 5 is connected. The 5th perfume that I would choose in the top 5 Les Exclusifs fragrances of all time thus far is a perfume that does share the name, but only the name, not the smell, of a Chanel fragrance that was released during Coco's life that has then been discontinued. And if you know, you know. So I'm going to reveal it now because by now who knows and guessed it. Here goes, number 5. Sycomore by Chanel. Eau de toilette, first and foremost. Then the Parfum, which was released in 2022. I adore. It's very heavy on the violet, though. And then the current version of the Eau de Parfum. I was not a fan of the first Eau de Parfum released in 2016. Didn't like it. Now they've reformulated it. Now the Eau de Parfum smells closer to what the Eau de Toilette used to smell like. Still heavy on the violet. Slightly sweeter than the Eau de Toilette. Mind you, I have all 3 concentrations because I adore it. And I do love all 3 of them, especially now in the current version of the Eau de Parfum. I'm so happy that I can finally purchase it again because for many years I stopped buying Sycomore. I just did not like what Olivier Polge did with the reformulation in 2016. Now this batch code is 7701. Love it. I love it. Actually, I mean, here I sprayed another fragrance for another video, so I'm not going to layer them. So, no, I'm all full with perfumes. I can't layer this one. Or you know what? Let me layer it with the secret perfume. My live chat knows what perfume that was. Oh my gosh. What a beauty. So, Chanel did release a perfume called Sycomore in the 30s, I believe. Maybe in the early 40s even. But it was then discontinued soon after that, and very different smell to today's Sycomore. They have nothing in common, okay? Just the name. Now, the Chanel website is a little sneaky. They kind of like to describe, while they describe this one, because this one has become one of their best sellers from the Les Exclusifs range. Their best seller is Sycomore, Coromandel, Beige, and Bois. Those are kind of the 4. But Sycomore being top 1 at the moment, bestseller. So they're kind of adding more history to it. The second something sells a lot, they start inventing stuff. You know, we do know that Sycomore did exist while Coco was alive, but it smelled different. But Chanel doesn't tell you that on their website as of now. They might change their text, but as of now they say Sycomore already existed in the 30s or 40s, and so we brought it back. Only in name, you did not bring it back in smell. But we digress. Nevertheless, the current version of it I mean, just divine. Listen, the vetiver in here, okay. Especially in the eau de toilette, you have that wet soil vetiver, which I adore. In the 2016 version, the first eau de parfum, that entire wet aspect of the vetiver was gone. It was a dry, sweet vetiver. Now, with this formula, we're going back to that wetter vetiver. It's still a lot of violet in there, and it's sweet-ish, but there's also that bitter, wet vetiver hue in there. And so I'm super happy that I can finally buy Sycomore again, you know, and I don't have to keep depleting my eau de toilette stock, because I really enjoy the eau de parfum as well. They are different. They are different, but still, nevertheless, with its 3 concentrations, of which one is discontinued, the eau de toilette being the one discontinued, and the eau de parfum and the parfum being still available, this is definitely in my top 5. Just because it's very different from the other 4. And listen, you know, another contendant to the top 5 was 31 Rue Cambon. Believe it or not, also Le Lion de Chanel was very close. But they all have something very, like, DNA-wise identifiable or comparable to the other original 4. Now, obviously, the original 4 are the original 4. Every other perfume is inspired by these, because this is what you have to work with. This is the DNA of Chanel. You know, every Les Exclusifs is going to be a new facet of what the base gave us. But Sycomore kind of challenges this the most, and this is why it's up there for me in the top 5. It is different enough to be its own perfume. It is different enough to have its own power and strength, and yet it is quintessentially Chanel. It has a very, very beautiful character. It is determined, strong, but it's not overpowering. It's not overbearing. It just knows what it is. Like a class, it's like Chanel number 19, you know, it's like, I know who I am, you know, you don't need to mess with me. And that's what Sycomore is. But that vetiver, which is lacking in these other fragrances, really makes it its own special accord, plus the violet in there. And those woods that are just, they're still humid. They're still wet and earthy and soily, and they're kind of brown and green at the same time. But they're almost like a lichen, but they're kind of going into that, you know, if Bois des Iles is the woods of the islands, it's more like you arrive in the eau de parfum form. You're like arriving to this island. There's the beach, and there's these like gorgeous palm trees and other woods and kind of jungle vibes. But you're at the beach, and you look on one side and you get the ocean and the sun, and you look to the other side and you get the entrance to the woods. And they're tantalizing and alluring you and calling you in, right? But it's still kind of relatively safe. That's what Bois des Iles is. But Sycomore is like once you've entered those woods, and you start going deep into those woods, very little sunshine peeks through. It's a jungle. And it becomes like a weird mix of, for the 20s standards, exotic jungle, but also a kind of European type of thick, dense forest, like we've seen in Walt Disney cartoons like Snow White from the 30s. That type of forest that Snow White is running through. Do you remember Snow White, the cartoon? When the queen orders the huntsman to unalive her and rip her heart out, and Snow White runs into the forest, and he doesn't have the heart to take her life, and he tells her, run, run, run. The queen wants her life. And she starts running through that forest, and the forest is so menacing to her. She's never been there alone, and she's like very dramatic in all those moves, running through the forest, and the branches grab her, and it gets darker and darker and grayer and wetter and more humid, and she screams, and she's like running like this, and then she falls to the ground, and there's all of this flora and fauna surrounding her, and it's damp and scary and dark, and she's crying, and she's like, you know, her head is down, and she's just in tears. And then slowly, as she kind of comes to her senses again, there's all these really cute animals that slowly creep out from the darkness, and she realizes it's not dangerous. Well, that's Sycomore. In the moment when Snow White is Sycomore eau de parfum, it's that moment when Snow White is scared, confused, running through this forest that is so damp and menacing. But we've seen the movie already, so we know that in reality, when there is light, it's not menacing. So we are comforted, unless you're not watching it for the first time. But Sycomore is not something you're watching for the first time, at least not me. See, this is why it's interesting to revisit these fragrances after so many years, because then it's like rewatching a movie you love so much. So for me right now, this iteration of Sycomore is that moment where Snow White doesn't know if she's going to survive or not, that run through that damp, scary forest. But we know, because we've seen the movie already. So we know that she's going to wake up and it's all going to be fine. That reassurance is the poetry of Sycomore. We smell that wet, humid, damp soil in that menacing forest. But we also smell the field of violets in the distant background. And we know that we will make it through that forest. And on the other end, there's going to be sun. It's such a beautiful feeling of allowing yourself to fall into something that appears to be menacing, but you trust your partner. Sure, connotation could be parallels, could be drawn to, S&M relationships. Now people are going to go, oh my God, what are you talking about? Well, it's a very particular type of relationship. It's like you allow your partner mutually consensual to hurt you. This is basically the definition of S&M, you guys. You give total control to your partner, right? If one is a sadist, the other one is a masochist. But you give them control and power over you to hurt you because you know that they will never hurt you. It's a very, very particular state of mind. Because you trust your partner to be able to push the boundary of pleasure and pain just to the right point because they know you. And testing out that limit, you can only do it with somebody you fully trust. And you can only do it with somebody who you know is never going to breach that trust. And there's something very beautiful if you manage to balance that. That is Sycomore in its current formulation of the eau de parfum. If you haven't escaped this pleasure dungeon thus far through this video and I haven't spooked you, then subscribe. Because you're my people if you've stayed this long. Subscribe, why not? Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your top 5 in the comment section down below. These fragrances are the love of my life. They are my best friends. They whisper poems to me. They cry to me. They help me when I'm crying. They make me feel like everything is going to be okay. And if I had to choose just 5 to spend the rest of my days with, it would be these 5. And I would be happy till the end of time. Until next time, never forget to never give up on fragrant love. Thumb up the video and subscribe. Bye.